Hello everyone, welcome back to another brand new video, and in today's video we will once again be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen. As you all know, the manga has now been completed, so today I think it's time to sit down and rank all 11 arcs of the manga from worst to best. I think this is going to be a fun and interesting list because Jujutsu Kaisen's arcs are all surprisingly diverse and unique. But because of that very fact, you might enjoy an arc that I don't enjoy as much, or vice versa. So be sure to remember that this is just my opinion, and feel free to comment your own list down below. I'd be interested to see it. Anyways, without further ado, let's just jump right into today's list. Coming in at number 11 is going to be the Itadori's extermination arc. I actually very much enjoy this arc, and there's actually arcs above it that I enjoy less. But the problem is that this arc shouldn't really even be an arc. Itadori's extermination is only 7 chapters long and only consists of the Yuji, Yuta, Choso, and Naoya fight. And while that fight is pretty good and very enjoyable, it's hard to call these 7 chapters a unified arc in the story. The anime will probably end up knocking this arc out in 2 episodes or less. And I think that you can have an arc that is this short, and there's an arc later on that was only 10 chapters and 3 episodes. But that arc feels like an arc, and feels like it has its own purpose in the story. I honestly don't understand why this and Perfect Preparation are separated. If those arcs were just combined into one, this one would skyrocket up the list. But overall, this feels like I'm just ranking a fight versus a bunch of other story arcs, which is why this one comes in at last place. Number 10, Shinjuku Showdown. I easily think Shinjuku Showdown is the worst arc of the show, and the only thing keeping it above Itadori's extermination is the fact that it is an arc. Shinjuku Showdown has the most actively bad moments in JJK, and it's really not even close. But let's talk about what I like from this arc first. Obviously, Gojo vs Sukuna is awesome, and is widely recognized as one of the series' best fights, which I agree with. I like aspects of some of the fights afterwards. Yuta vs Sukuna, some of Yuji vs Sukuna, and Kusakabe vs Sukuna has aged rather well for me personally. But honestly, that's where the good ends. There is so much wrong with this arc in my eyes, and it's where a lot of the story started to fall apart. Which is a shame, because falling apart at the final hour like this is just rough to see. Higuruma was handled terribly, with the reason for his domain expansion not working and taking Sukuna's curse tool being an extremely stupid choice. He also gets taken out of action and is assumed dead until he's revealed to be alive in one of the final chapters with zero fanfare. We just cut to him in the middle of a conversation. Maki does a whole lot of nothing in this arc, heading in to fight Sukuna on 2 separate occasions only to get black flashed out of the fight both times. The death of Choso is probably my least favorite writing decision of the series, and makes no sense narratively. The whole Yujo fight is bizarre and ends up feeling like filler by the end of things, and Hikari vs Urame became the joke of the series, with them being completely MIA for 50 chapters, with the wrap-up to their fight being absolutely atrocious. And then of course, if that wasn't enough, Nobara returning and helping Yuji land the final blow on Sukuna, despite being asleep when the battle began, is just a gigantic slap in the face and is an insulting conclusion to the fight that we've been building towards the entire series. Everything that follows with the epilogue and wrap-up of the series varies on average and bad, with the one good thing being Gojo and Yuji's final conversation in the final chapter. But besides that, this entire arc is a very rough read. Number 9, the Cursed Child arc. The Cursed Child arc is extremely average. This of course serves as the intro for Yuta Ogotsu as he helms the arc. We also get to spend more time with the second years of Jujutsu High, Maki, Inumaki, and Panda. And I also like that we get to see little moments that were mentioned in the past, like Nanami's record-breaking 4 black flash streak and Todo knocking out curse spirits without his technique. However, the best part of this arc is the bits we get from Geto and Gojo, because their dynamic is the best dynamic of the show. I like the conversation we get with them in front of the school, and then their final conversation is really cool. This arc just serves its purpose very well. It's a perfect little bottle arc. Number 8, the Death Painting arc. The death painting arc was the arc I was referring to earlier in the video. Despite only being 10 chapters long and 3 episodes in the show, this arc offers something for all of our major characters, and it feels like a complete part of the story. At first glance, this arc can feel a bit fillerish, just a random mission for our 3 main characters to go on to kill some time. But you learn soon after that this just isn't the case. Megumi uses his domain expansion for the first time, which is one of his coolest moments, period. Nobara hits a black flash with Yuji and uses her technique to kill Ketchizu, which is her coolest moment, period. Yuji also gets to shine here, hitting his black flash alongside Nobara and killing Eso. This of course sets up his fight with Choso later on, which becomes my favorite episode of the show. I very much enjoy this arc, and I respect it for how much it was able to achieve in such a short time span. Number 7. Fearsome Womb. The Fearsome Womb arc serves as our introduction to the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, and it does a pretty good job. Despite the very beginning of the story being a bit rushed in my opinion, by the end of the arc, everything really comes together and fits like a nice neat puzzle to make the arc feel like the satisfying intro it set out to be. We get our first little nugget of Gojo versus Sukuna, which ends up coming back later. We get to see Sukuna take over Yuji for the first time in the detention center, where he battles with Megumi, and we get to see Yuji and Sukuna make their binding vow, and both of these plot points converge almost 200 chapters later when Sukuna takes over Megumi's body. Gojo vs. Jogo is also a part of this arc, and they give us the tutorial for domain expansions. And the gang meets Todo, introducing us to our favorite delusional sorcerer, which is such a fun little way to wrap up this arc. Number 6. Culling games. This is probably a very controversial take, as I've seen a lot of Culling games enthusiasts out there, but I believe that this arc is the most inconsistent of the manga. I think this arc has some of the best and coolest moments, with some of the worst moments sprinkled in along the way. Starting with the positives, the fights here for the most part are awesome, and rival and sometimes even top the fights from Shibuya. Hikari vs. Kashimo is an epic fight, and almost everyone unanimously agrees that it's the part of Culling games we're excited to see animated the most. The Yuji vs. Higuruma stuff is fantastic. Higuruma's intro was perfect and had everybody enjoying his presence, and his arc with Yuji here is excellent. I don't see a lot of people talking about Megumi and Reggie, but that's also a part of Culling games that I very much enjoyed, and I'm very hyped to see it animated. The stuff in Sendai is good, but I myself find it overrated from a story standpoint. And now, to the stuff I don't like. I'm not the biggest fan of Maki and Naoya's rematch. It feels especially redundant, not just because it happened already, but because Maki doesn't even get to show off her growth in this bout against Sukuna in Shinjuku Showdown. The fight between Kenjaku, Yuki, and Choso just sucks. Yuki's death from a narrative standpoint is fine at the time, but ages like milk when Choso dies later on, and the anti-gravity shit that Kenjaku uses to hard counter Yuki is bullshit and one of Gege's iconic ass pulls. I also don't like the twist of Sumiki being Yorozu the whole time, as it renders the entire last 50 chapters pointless, and the twist is also just extremely mean-spirited for really no reason. This twist also greatly affects Megumi, but we don't get to see much of a reaction from him considering Sukuna takes his body until the end of the story. This is also the start of a lot of the problems that bog down Shinjuku, so while Culling games is a net enjoyable experience, its inconsistencies land it here at the center of the list. This arc also had the US military plotline, and what the fuck even was that? Number 5, the Kyoto Goodwill event. The Kyoto Goodwill event is another arc that is a bit inconsistent, but that really stems from its weaker moments just being boring. This isn't the most enjoyable JJK arc out there, but there's little to no bad writing present, which I value more than something like a Culling games that has such a high variance in its writing. This arc gives us our first ever Besto Friendos jump jutsu fight, that being Yuji and Todo versus Hanami, which is very fun. And we also get another moment of Gojo shine as he hits his hollow purple for the first time. Along the way, we spend time meeting the Kyoto students and seeing some fun fights. Mechamaru vs. Panda, Maki vs. Miwa, Kamo vs. Megumi, and Maki vs. Mai, to name a few, with that last fight I just mentioned between the Zenin sisters being the standout of the bunch. This arc is the biggest early arc, giving us some of the largest scale battles we had seen up until this point, while also spending time to give us meaningful character interactions, which tend to fade away the longer the series goes. Overall, this is just a very solid and well executed arc in the series. Number 4. versus Mahito. The versus Mahito arc is the highlight of the early days of Jujutsu Kaisen. We are introduced to Mahito, who is the best antagonist of the series in my opinion. His dynamic with Yuji and the newly acquainted Junpei is some of the best character writing the show ever does. We meet Nanami in this arc as well, one of the best characters of the entire manga despite his rather quick exit from the story. The fights here are awesome as well, as we get a bunch of mix and matches of Yuji, Junpei, Mahito, and Nanami, and all of them are great. This arc is the prelude to the best moments of Shibuya, setting up that arc to be as great as it ends up being. We don't get a lot of time with our other characters in this one, but that results in this arc being a more focused slice of the story, only revolving around a key 4 pieces. Junpei dying is one of the most shocking things to happen in JJK, not only because of the intro baiting you, but because of the way Gege has written the story up to this point. Versus Mahito is a very good and necessary arc in the grand scheme of JJK. Number 3. Perfect Preparation. The best arc that is yet to be animated in my opinion. The only thing holding it back from a higher placement is the fact that some of the fantastic writing in this arc doesn't end up with the greatest payoff later on into the story. But despite that, this arc is very good. This arc consists of Maki versus the Zenin clan and the introduction of Hikari and Kirara. The Maki stuff here is hands down the best thing in the manga post-Shibuya, in my opinion. Mai's death is handled perfectly, Naoya's first death is handled perfectly, and Maki's massacre is handled perfectly. It's just a shame that past this arc, Maki slowly begins to fade away into the background. And the same goes for Hikari. Everybody loved Hikari upon his introduction and gravitated towards his really cool and unique curse technique. But, like Maki, after the Culling games, he just becomes absent, literally fighting off-screen for the entirety of the final arc. This was an outstanding foundation for 2 characters heading forwards into the latter half of the manga, but the latter half of the manga's writing kicked the foundation out from under itself and rendered a lot of what was done here pointless in the story once it was all said and done, and that's the only reason I can't place this any higher. Number 2. Hidden Inventory. I've said that this was the best arc in the show, I even made a video about it, and I still agree to an extent. Hidden Inventory into the Shibuya incident is one of the most legendary runs in manga, and that becoming season 2 of JJK turned into an all-time season of anime. I think Hidden Inventory is the best arc in terms of character writing. A lot of subtle differences, changes, and decisions our characters make impact them for the rest of their time in the series. Gojo and Geto's dynamic is front and center, and the mentality switch that is pulled off between the two is brilliant. Toji is a fantastic antagonist and has one of the best written deaths in the entire show. Riko is a great addition to the arc, and her death is also one of the best written deaths in the entire show. This is just the quintessential shonen arc. It has everything that you'd want. Great character arcs, likable characters with traits, fun action, and it's all perfectly paced. But despite that, it only comes in at number 2, because number 1 is the Shibuya incident. This arc is Gege's magnum opus. It truly does feel like Gege had everything mapped up to this point in the story. Every single character converges on this one point, and everybody has something to do or a satisfying conclusion to their story. It feels like the mid-series finale in a way, and it kind of just straight up is. And it's better than the actual series finale in every way possible. Yuji versus Mahito is concluded, which is the best protagonist to antagonist dynamic across the entire series. Megumi gets to summon Mahoraga, and Sukuna has to protect him, further progressing that little mystery as to why Sukuna had wanted to protect him. Nobara's death scene would have been the perfect ending to her character if it fucking stuck, which is my only real knock against this arc, but I'm not gonna let it deter me. Gojo getting trapped in the prison realm due to Kenjaku being in Geto's body is one of, if not the single best moment of payoff in the show. Nanami's conclusion is the best in the series. Toji gets a second perfect death scene, literally the only character I've ever seen get 2 different death scenes that are 100% flawless in their own special ways. And also, I haven't even mentioned the action in this arc that speaks for itself. So many all-time anime fights. Todo and Yuji versus Mahito, Mahoraga versus Sukuna, Jogo vs Sukuna, Mahito vs Mekamaru, and Toji vs Dagon, to name a few. This arc is just truly perfect and is one of the best anime arcs you'll ever see. That has been my list. Comment down below if you agreed or if you disagreed, but be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day.